Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalists Fellowship of the Rappahannock. There was a misprint in your order of service. My name is Dorothea Dix. Some of you may know me as a superintendent of the Army nurses in the Civil War, or of my pioneering work advocating for the rights and humane treatment of the mentally ill. I've been a Unitarian for a very long time. And I am honored that Miss Anthony invited me to be your service leader today. We welcome you. We are aware that you come here for many and varied reasons: to find community, to seek your spiritual and personal truths, to nurture your heart and soul, to be nurtured by and find comfort in this community, to explore new ideas, and perhaps to find answers to some of your bigger questions. We hope that you will find that which you seek, and most importantly, we hope that you find love here. As we settle into the sanctuary, I invite everyone to be fully present by quieting their cell phones and the mental chatter that may have accompanied you on your way to the fellowship this morning. I also invite you all, and especially any first-time visitors, to remain present for our coffee hour at the close of our service so that we can share refreshments and conversations with each other. As we light our chalice this morning, the light of our creative spirits, the light of our wise souls, the light of our wondering and curious minds, the light of love for this place, these people, this work, illuminate our hearts and the spaces between them in this sacred time of unfolding. Mary Oliver, a Unitarian friend who is a wee bit younger than me, will be pleased to know that we have made one of her poems into a reading. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert, repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you about mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees and the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. I would love to introduce to you now my friend, Susan B. Anthony. She has a reading that she would like to share with us this morning.
Thank you very much, Dorothea. Good morning, everyone. So glad to be with you this morning. My first reading is called Anyway, and it is by Kent M. Keith, anyway, the paradoxical commandments. And some of you will be familiar with this. It turns out that Mother Teresa took this poem and made it into her own. So you're going to recognize some of this. Anyway, people are illogical, unreasonable, and self-centered. Love them anyway. If you do good, people will accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Do good anyway. If you are successful, you will win false friends and true enemies. Succeed anyway. The good you do today will be forgotten tomorrow. Do good anyway. Honesty and frankness make you vulnerable. Be honest and frank anyway. The biggest men and women with the biggest ideas can be shot down by the smallest men and women with the smallest minds. Think big anyway. People favor underdogs, but follow only top dogs. Fight for a few underdogs anyway. What you spend years building may be destroyed overnight. Build anyway. People really need help, but may attack you if you do help them. Help people anyway. Give the world the best you have, and you might get kicked in the teeth. Give the world the best you have anyway. My second reading are words from Pope Francis, and it seemed appropriate that we hear from him this morning in light of his passing last week. Really a great man, compassionate and kind, and whether you agree with his religion or not, I think it is truly worth remembering him. These are his words while in the hospital. The walls of hospitals have heard more honest prayer than churches. They have witnessed far more sincere kisses than those in airports. It is in hospitals that you see a homophobe being saved by a gay doctor, a privileged doctor saving the life of a beggar. In intensive care, you see a Jew taking care of a racist, a police officer and a prisoner in the same room, receiving the same care, a wealthy patient waiting for a liver transplant, ready to receive the organ from a poor donor. It is in these moments when the hospital touches the wounds of people that different worlds intersect according to a divine design. And in this communion of destinies, we realize that alone we are nothing. The absolute truth of people most of the time only reveals itself in moments of pain or in the real threat of an irreversible loss. A hospital is a place where human beings remove their masks and show themselves as they truly are in their purest essence. This life will pass quickly, so do not waste it fighting with people. Do not criticize your body too much. Do not complain excessively. Do not lose sleep over bills. Make sure to hug your loved ones. Do not worry too much about keeping the house spotless. Material goods must be earned by each person. Do not dedicate yourself to accumulating an inheritance. You are waiting for too much. Christmas, Friday, next year, when you have money, when love arrives, when everything is perfect. Listen, perfection does not exist. A human being cannot attain it because we are simply not made to be fulfilled here. Here, we are given an opportunity to learn. So, make the most of this trial of life and do it now. Respect yourself, respect others, walk your own path, and let go of the path others have chosen for you. Respect, Do not comment, do not judge, do not interfere. Love more, forgive more, embrace more, live more intensely. So before I tell you about myself, I have a few other words to say to you about our meeting here today. You've probably noticed by now that this is not your traditional service. I don't usually wear a hat like this to start with, if there is such a thing as a traditional service here in this church. But I did want to tell you a bit about how this idea came to be. Several of us were discussing an orientation for new UUs and how to present a bit of history to our religion. We didn't want to get dragged down by too much historical fact, so we decided to add some interest and humor to the idea while remaining true to our history. Like me, you may have never stopped long enough to notice in the hallway to the RE room and the bathrooms that there's a framed picture of famous UUs hanging on the wall. That picture was in part the inspiration for today's service. Next time you walk by, I invite you to stop and take a look at it. So today you will be introduced to some of our fellow UUs, past and present, who have led some interesting lives, and they are seated here in front of you. Yes, their accomplishments have brought them fame, but it is the lives that they've lived and are still living in one case that we will be focusing on, for they are famous UUs with lives well lived. So let me say this. At some point in this life on earth, we're likely to have asked ourselves the question, why am I here? What is the purpose of my existence? We wonder these things, or at least most of us have. On some level, we are all looking for ways to live a more meaningful life. Finding meaning is fundamentally a personal journey. Viktor Frankl, in 1959, wrote in his book called Man's Search for Meaning, quote, "Man's search for meaning is the primary motivation in his life and not a secondary rationalization of instinctual drives. This meaning is unique and specific in that it must and can be fulfilled by him alone. Only then does a person's life achieve a significance that will satisfy his own will to meaning." Most people define success or purpose in living a good life as that which involves their own joy and happiness. Ralph Waldo Emerson, a former UU himself, whose quote is printed on the inside of your order of service, argues that a good life is based upon how we leave the world after we pass from this earth, and that what we do in life leaves those around us better off than they were before. But a life well lived is not just about being there for others, but also being there for ourselves. Let's not rule out joy, happiness, and pleasure altogether. According to some researchers, people derive meaning and fulfillment from many things, but there are several factors that rise to the top. A rich, unfolding self, where we can pursue projects and activities that personally matter to us. A life perceived as worthwhile, and a life perceived as having made a positive impact. And legacy, that is, making a positive difference or doing something with one's life that matters to others. This research clearly supports what Emerson states. There are certain strengths of character that seem to support what we call a life well lived. Hope, motivation, and determination to attain goals, and a zest or an enthusiasm for the things you choose to do. These are some. Other strengths, like social intelligence, leadership, perspective, and bravery, are also relevant. We know that certain activities seem to promote a sense of fulfillment and meaning in life. Volunteering, spirituality, financial stability, education, and positive childhood experiences were found to enhance and support the ability to create meaningful lives. Of course, creating a meaningful life is a long-term process. Hopefully by now, most of us have been able to find meaning and purpose in our lives. And this process continues on until the end. A well-known developmental psychologist by the name of Erik Erikson added an 8th stage of development in his later life. And this stage is called ego integrity versus despair. He refers to this stage as applying to people like us, 65 and older, or late adulthood. This is a time when people reflect upon their lives and their accomplishments. If they view their experiences as meaningful, they achieve what he calls ego integrity, a sense of satisfaction and readiness to face life's end. Those who feel they've fallen short may experience some despair, marked by regret, bitterness, or a fear of death. When individuals feel they have lived a fulfilling and meaningful life, they will experience this thing called ego integrity, an acceptance of one's life as it has been lived, the ability to find coherence and purpose in one's experiences, and a sense of wisdom and fulfillment, a sense of wholeness. It is important to acknowledge that there does exist cross-cultural differences, but in this context, with our Western values, Erikson's theory of this final stage of development makes a lot of sense to me. So, with all of this in mind, we will be introducing you to some famous UUs, or Dorothea will be, who have lived meaningful lives. Their accomplishments are extraordinary, and yet we remember that each of us, we are on our own unique journey through life. But for myself, I have to believe that it's the mostly simple lives that we live that will continue to bring joy, meaning, and purpose to each of us. So, at this time, I will turn this over to Diana, who will introduce you to some famous UUs, past and present. Excuse me, Dorothea.
Thank you, Susan. You are likely familiar with the work of our beloved Beatrix Potter, celebrated English author and illustrator. What you may not know about her is her peculiar interest in fungi. Maybe she will tell you about that, or maybe not. But I would like to offer the floor to you, Beatrix. Yes, you might.
Morning. I'm kind of lost. According to the program when I arrived this morning, Miss Beatrix Potter is scheduled to speak to you about her life as a Unitarian. And I see in the program it is a Unitarian life well lived. Well, I am certainly honored to be among that list. I am Beatrix Potter, Hellas. Beatrix Potter Hellas, please notice that there is a married name there. From Hilltop Farm and Castle Farm in the most beautiful countryside of North England. But everything I see around me says 2025. I am most confused because I live in 1925, and this seems to be Virginia, not England. Very early this morning, I was on a walk, on my spiritual walk that I do around my beautiful farmland before the sun rises. walking with my friend, Mrs. Rabbit, and wee little Peter, I stepped in a hole. And I ended up in this wonderful natural labyrinth in your backyard. So I suppose I am supposed to be here talking about Unitarianism and how it influenced my life. I can't stay for the talk, but I most hope to be able to return shortly thereafter so that my William will not worry and so that I can check and make sure that Mrs. Rabbit and wee Peter are okay. My William will worry if he awakens and I'm not there. So, okay. So first, I was born in 1866 into a wealthy, upper middle class Unitarian family in London. My father was a very busy solicitor, and my mother, well, let's just say nurturing is not her strong suit. So we were raised by governesses. My younger Bertram and I were raised by governesses that were well selected by my parents. They wanted to know that the people that were teaching their children understood our Unitarian lifestyle. And so I can tell you that my education was far better than the young women that were educated in the public school systems in my time. All four of my grandparents were Unitarians. All four of so I was raised in the Unitarian tradition. They were involved in the Unitarian community. They embraced and practiced the liberal traditions of individual conscience, intellectual freedom, the value of science, the wonder of nature and human respect for interaction with the natural world, the importance of education and social responsibility. And as a young woman, when I became quite annoyed with all of these strictures that were put on my Unitarianism, I almost left the church or the fellowship or whatever we might call our community. But I decided that I was going to add individual spiritualism into that mix and live my life as a Unitarian on my terms as a spiritual independent. And so I have chosen to do that. You will forgive me. Before I landed in the labyrinth this morning, I didn't know I was talking to you. And so I quickly put together a script and I must stick to it so I can be away from the podium in the 5 minutes that I'm told I'm allotted. My paternal grands, Edmund and Jessica, were Unitarian paragons. Edmund is a progressive industrialist and philanthropist. He owned very, very successful textile mills in England. He founded community schools. He supported and fought for workers' rights. He created day schools and all sorts of educational opportunities for his workers, old and young, created a library on his textile mill grounds. And Jessica, she lived into the popular view of Unitarianism as radical and rebellious. I believe I inherited gifts from both of these grands. Although I did not see them often enough, we did spend summers very nearby. Most of our summers were in rented homes in the Lake District. I came to love the beautiful countryside of the English Lake District. And I was introduced to the real world of nature and science, and it paved the way to the career that I now love. My brother and I lived pretty much within the confines of our schoolhouse, in our upstairs, and our playrooms. We were considered isolated children, but I was not lonely. I had many, many friends. They were my pets. They were snakes, and they were rabbits, and they were skanks, and everything that most people would go, ooh, were my friends. And I talked to them, and I loved them. And my parents even let me take them on our summer vacation. So they became part of the family and part of my life. Through them, I learned to love the wee, small, living creatures in nature. I also learned to love art, as did my grands and my father before me, and storytelling about and with my wee friends. All of this was not only supported, but encouraged and taught to me by my governesses. So you see, my new 21st century friends, it was only natural as I became an adult, I would remain true to my Unitarian tenaciousness, also inherited from Jessica. I would incorporate the love of science and nature and wee small things. And I also inherited using my artistic and storytelling skills, I would write and illustrate stories about my animals. And I also, by the way, on the side, yes, I loved fungi. And I drew fungi and I painted fungi, and I became very well known for my knowledge and my illustrations of mushrooms. I do understand there's a different understanding of mushrooms in this time. And I would very much like to stick around and talk about that, but I must return home. After I created these books, these little illustrated stories about my animals, I did the most socially forbidden for women thing of the day. I went for it. I found a publisher who loved my work and introduced the world to Beatrix Potter's Peter Rabbit. Even more rebellious, my publisher and I fell in love, and we became engaged, quite to the dismay of my parents, who believed that a tradesman was not fit for their upper crust daughter, but we planned to marry anyway. Sadly, Norman died. Wayne or Norman? Wayne. He died before we could get married. Very heartbroken, I soldiered on. With the money that Peter Rabbit earned me, I went out and bought myself a farm in the Lake District. I added sheep farmer to my career list. That was in 1905. In 1913, I married William Hillis, my solicitor, who helped me through the hurdles of being a woman purchasing farmland, and that was very difficult, I might add. We now live down the way a bit from Hilltop, which was my first beloved farm, but it remains, we continue to own it. It remains my heart and soul and the farm of my studio and personal collection place. This lovely countryside has become the major source of inspiration for my work. Peter Rabbit, Jemima Puddle Duck, Tom Kitten, Mrs. Tiddlywinkle, Jeremy Fisher, and so much more to come, I do hope. I was so very fortunate to be born into the Unitarian traditions, for they have guided my way to unexpected fame and a cherished lifestyle. One day, I don't know when, I will run out of wee little friends to write about, but the money I earn will continue to grow, and it will continue to allow me to purchase more and more farmland, and to protect and nurture the natural beauty of the amazing countryside. So, because with this farmland, I don't choose to live the life of a wealthy, privileged landowner. I purchased this land to preserve it and care for it and pass it on to future generations. Most of my farmland will be left to a natural trust, protecting it well into the future. And I am so overjoyed to have found in your library in 2025, Peter Rabbit and his friends. I am so thrilled to know that my friends have lived into the next generation and into your lives. And I do hope that they have inspired you and your children and will teach them a little bit about the importance of our wonderful world and the need to protect it. And now I must leave you and go back and find that special place in the labyrinth and go back home to my William. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I don't want to take your stuff.
Thank you so much for sharing such a lovely story. Our next speaker, his great-great-grandfather, Clemens Vonnegut, and I were contemporaries. I used to love to wander the aisles of the Vonnegut Hardware Company whenever I visited Indiana. His fine great-great-grandson, Kurt Vonnegut, is with us today. Kurt, would you like to speak at the podium?
Ladies and gentlemen, siblings of this grand adventure we call life. Let's get right to the point. Life itself is an art form, haphazard tapestry woven of kindness, absurdity, and try not to step on too many toes. I myself try not to step on more than 2 toes for everybody I meet. And if there's one thing I've learned, that we humans are messy as we are miraculous. As a proud admirer and a UU way of life, I must say, we figured something out that ought to be obvious. Nobody has all the answers. And that's just fine. As I once wrote, we are here to help each other get through this thing, whatever it is. Unitarian Universalism is a way of doing precisely that, helping each other, honoring each other's humanity. You embrace freedom, reason, and connection, believing in the intrinsic worth of every soul without needing pins and labels on it. You hold sacred the act of searching for truth and meaning, knowing full well that truth just might be hiding under the sofa cushions with your car keys. We dare to do this without judgment, with open hearts, and perhaps a little humor. To me, that's a life well lived. In my books, and I do mean books, not some abstract notion, you'll find this thing over and over again. Life is too short for cruelty, despair, and taking ourselves too seriously. As I once quipped, laughter and tears are both responses to frustration and exhaustion. I prefer to laugh because tears are too messy to clean up. What the world needs more of, what Unitarian Universalism celebrates, is laughter mingled with tears, the beauty of our shared humanity. You know, folks, the great cosmic joke is that none of us know what's really going on here. So it goes. And I've said before, but it doesn't mean that we give up. Instead, we make our ignorance with compassion. Compassion is the glue that holds communities together, that transforms strangers into neighbors and makes our life worth remembering. As Unitarian Universalists, we have built our faith on the bedrock of compassion and inclusion. You've chosen to make this life count, not by winning some existential prize, but by creating a world in which love always gets the last word. Here's the thing, many of us spend time chasing the meaning of life when meaning of life is right in front of us. It's the person sitting next to you. It's the laughter you share, the help you offer, the courage to say, we're all in this together. And in a nod to what I think is rather underrated principle, it's the courage to sometimes say, I have no idea what's going on, what I'm doing. But let's muddle through this beautifully chaotic world together anyway. Let me leave you with this thought from one of my books. Many people need desperately to receive this message. I think much of you do. Care about many of the things you care about, although most of the people do not care about them. You are not alone. That is the heart of Unitarian Universalist life well lived. It's the courageous belief that none of us need to face the wild existence on our own, and that together, with our imperfections of silliness, we can make life a little better for the ones that come after us. Thank you for embracing the absurdity, the grace, and the endless search for meaning that makes us human. Thank you for showing us a life well lived can look like. Thank you again. And as I said, so it goes.
Thank you so much, Kurt. Our next guest, the youngest among us, is an American actress, screenwriter, and film director. She says that her films tend to be based upon her own experiences. It makes me wonder what she and Barbie have in common. Maybe she will tell us. I introduce to you Greta Gerwig.
I come to add a little color to the group. It feels so good to be home. I was born into the UU community. My parents were married at the UU Society of Sacramento, and I had my naming ceremony in 1983 with the then minister, Ted Webb. My parents did end up leaving the church for a short time in the 1990s, but have since returned. My mom likes to say that having a time for a walkabout is very Unitarian. I think religion has always been something that has occupied me as a person. And Unitarianism is the most complete expression of my multiple and at times contradictory thoughts about spiritual life. I think the openness of the community allows for a greater variety of personal faith and ideas. And it isn't oppressively open, but generously so. Elements of UU that speak to me are its gentleness and its equanimity. I think they are incredibly rare and should be the cornerstone of spiritual or religious practice. I love how open the UU Church is, but that it also provides a structure and a community of religion. I think I keep returning to UU churches again and again because they resonate with something deep inside of me that feels that all I really know is that I don't know. Unitarian Universalism is the best place for me to experience the fullness of that sentiment of not knowing. But before I forget, I want to thank UU World for sharing my life, my stories, and seeing their worth in UU realm. You can find those stories. If you remember the movie Francis Ha, the main character, who is me, goes home for Christmas, and it features the Unitarian Universalist congregation I grew up in Sacramento, California. I very much enjoyed playing this character, who was a rootless young woman in pursuit of a living space of her own. My UU upbringing and its influence can definitely be observed in my work as a writer, director, and actress. In this historically dominated industry, I've been able to emerge as a trailblazer, breaking barriers and reshaping the landscape of women in film. With my groundbreaking directorial debut of Lady Bird, and then I became the 5th woman ever to be nominated for the Best Director Oscar for my adaptation of Louisa May Alcott's Little Woman. I think it's important to pave the way for more opportunities for women in the industry, and hope that my success not only serves as inspiration to aspiring female filmmakers, but also highlights the need for diversity and inclusion in the film industry. I personally am trying to dismantle stereotypes and prove that women have a rightful place behind the camera. Currently, there's been a bit of an uproar because I really want Meryl Streep to be the voice of Aslan, who represents God in the Chronicles of Narnia movies, but this would be a gender swap. It's crucial that stories we see on screen reflect the diverse experiences and perspectives of the audience. Historically, the film industry has been dominated by these male white voices, resulting in a lack of representation for women and minority groups. But like any good UU, I also had been an advocate for the 50-50 by 2020 campaign, which was seeking to achieve some gender parity in leadership and decision-making positions within the film industry by the year 2020. Despite that campaign not achieving its goal, I remain a strong advocate for gender diversity, and this theme can definitely be noted, especially in my movie Barbie. This film represents a contemporary exploration of and challenge to patriarchy. This is an endeavor we all need to be aware of and work towards. Thank you all for making me a winner. In 2011, I won an award for the Athena Film Festival for my artistry as one of Hollywood's definitive screen actresses of my generation. Then in 2014, at 30 years old, I was selected as a member of the jury for the 64th Berlin International Film Festival. In 2018, I was nominated for Best Director of the 90th Awards for Lady Bird, which may be the first woman in 8 years and one of only 5 in Oscar history at the time to have been nominated in that category. My work on Lady Bird was nominated for 16 awards in notable circuits, winning 6 of those. I am also very proud of my adapted screenplay Best Women Screenwriter wins for Little Women in 2019. In 2023, I was lucky to receive that worldwide acclaim for the film Barbie, which has become the highest grossing film ever for a female director. I received a nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay at the 96th Academy Awards. And then in 2024, I presided over the feature film competition of the 2024 Cannes Film Festival. I've been busy. Becoming the first female director to take the role of jury president at the Cannes Film Festival. I am truly living my best life. Because overall, I've been nominated for 173 awards and have won 48 of them. Of course, it's the story that's really most important. Sharing life authentically with my viewers. I know that my UU values have certainly assisted me in writing, directing, and acting in films, along with being an advocate and voice for others. Thank you all here for welcoming me here today.
Thank you, Greta. You truly are a winner in my book. In elementary school, our next speaker was known as the class clown and dismissed by many of his teachers as being a lost cause. Boy, oh boy, were they wrong. I introduce you to the famous American screenwriter and television producer, Rod Serling.
Alter buyer cervical.
Okay. Hi, I'm Rod Serling. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I started my life in communications in the early 1940s by writing for my high school paper and participating on the debate team. After high school, I enlisted in the Army and was sent to the Philippines, where I participated in the battle for Manila. Upon my return to the United States, I used the GI Bill to enroll in Antioch College, where I majored in theater and broadcasting. I was active in the college radio station, acting, writing, and directing. During the 1948-49 school year, I wrote everything that was broadcast. During this time, I met my future wife, who came from a long line of Unitarians, and joined them myself. I graduated in 1950 and began my writing career. At first, I worked only for local outlets. Then I moved to New York City and finally to Hollywood. My writing drew heavily on my own experiences. Growing up in Binghamton, New York, I experienced anti-Semitism in school and in the community. This led me to champion racial equality. During the battle for Manila, I experienced death on a daily basis and was wounded several times myself. This experience led me to be opposed to war, both for its industrial style of death and the randomness of death that occurred. I experienced censorship when I wrote two different stories that were loosely based on the lynching of Emmett Till. In one of the stories, the main character was changed to an immigrant. In another, he was changed to a young Mexican boy. Both of these changes occurred at the insistence of network executives. This caused me to form my own production company in order to have more control over my scripts so that I could more forcefully advocate for human rights, for progressive causes, and challenge prevailing social norms. I was known as one of the angry young men of Hollywood because I often clashed with television executives and sponsors over a wide range of issues, including censorship, racism, gender stereotypes, and war. Most of you know me through my writing and producing of various science fiction and TV shows and movies. But these were just methods of communicating my beliefs in a manner that the wider public could find palatable. I believe it's a writer's responsibility to menace the public's conscience. The Twilight Zone episodes, as well as many of my scripts, were morality plays disguised as science fiction. Each episode was a Trojan horse. The network thought it was airing spooky stories when what they got was philosophical grenades disguised as Roddy McDowall in ape makeup. I used aliens to talk about segregation. I used dystopias to talk about McCarthyism. In my writing, I always sought for an emotional truth and attempted to make a statement on the human condition. Thank you.
Stand up and take a bow. Wait a minute, we do have one more speaker.
I would love to tell you about my life.
Please, Susan. I am so sorry.
Dorothea, it's only human to mistake. And with that, let me tell you why I'm here. First of all, good morning. My name is Susan B. Anthony, and I'm very happy to be here with you today. I was born in 1820 in Massachusetts. I've lived a very meaningful life thus far and has been anything but quiet and dull. I'll tell you a bit about me. I grew up in a Quaker family with a strong belief that all people were equal under God. This belief has guided me throughout my life's work. While I was born in a Quaker family, I attended the Unitarian Church for many years. Eventually, I became agnostic in my beliefs. We moved to Rochester, New York, where my whole family became involved in the anti-slavery movement. Father owned a cotton factory. I often heard him say that he did not wish to buy cotton raised by enslaved labor. He employed many young women in the factory. Some of them actually lived with us. But you see, even then, I wondered why Father never employed a woman as an overseer in his factory. I went on to teach in New York and joined the teachers union. I discovered that male teachers were earning $10 a month and women teachers were earning $2.50 a month. I could not sit back and remain quiet about this. I was inspired then to dedicate my life to women's equal rights. While I've received several proposals of marriage, I never chose to accept one of them. It always happened that the men I wanted were those I could not get, and those that wanted me I wouldn't have. I'm fierce in my fight to abolish slavery and to secure equal rights for all. I'll speak to anyone who will listen to my thoughts and beliefs about the need for all to gain independence and equality. I believe that it was we the people, not we the white male citizens, but we the whole people who formed the Union. And we formed it not to give the blessings of liberty, but to secure them, not to the half of ourselves and the half of our prosperity, but to the whole people, women as well as men. And it's a downright mockery to talk to women of their enjoyment of the blessings of liberty, while they are denied the use of the only means of securing them, provided by this democratic Republican government, and that is the ballot. My friend, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and I traveled the country advocating for women's rights and the abolition of slavery. We lobbied Congress for many, many years. My friend Elizabeth wrote a very controversial book called The Woman's Bible. I think that women have just as much a right to interpret and twist the Bible to their own advantage as men always have interpreted and twisted it to theirs. Well, finally, we, many of us working together, succeeded in seeing the 13th Amendment ratified to abolish slavery. However, I regret to say that during my lifetime thus far, I have yet to see women guaranteed the right to vote. I will, however, continue the good fight until my last breath. Equality for all.
Now, I would like to invite everyone of you to stand up and for you to a good round of applause. We are open for comments, questions. Yes, Dawn.
I don't have a question, but what I like about this whole production is that things I never knew about all of these people were brought out to me, and I really, really appreciate that.
Thank you. Yes.
About Beatrix, two things about Beatrix Potter. When she died, she owned 15 farms. And she put 3,000 acres into National Trust, and it remains in National Trust. She also kept a diary every day. She wrote in her diary, but she wrote it in code. So we would never be able to read or understand what her personal life was like. But drat it to her, somebody broke that code. And so there is a publication of Beatrix